So guys, I had another buyer flake on me. They just texted me. They told me that there was a decision between two different vehicles. One of them was a blank cargo van and one of them was mine. And they were basically trying to make the decision about if they wanted something that was already ready to be slept in, lived in, etc. versus getting something that was a blank slate for multiple reasons and for their personal uses going into the future. And so they made ultimately a choice to go the other way. And I just have to live with that. It's part of the process. But I can sit here and dream. But as I sit here and dream of my box truck, I'm also troubleshooting how I'm going to get power in my box truck. And I have decided I'm going to do something I didn't do with this van and didn't do with my minivan. I am going to run exclusively off of a power station, namely the Jackery. By the way, this video is sponsored by Jackery. So about a year ago, I got my first Jackery power station to review. Not this one, but the Jackery 1000. And I have loved and adored that thing from the day I got it. Unless you're like doing massive stuff, like running air conditioning units and, doing things that take a huge power drain, that thing is a beast. Sometimes I've not charged it for like 3 days, and not only did it keep my refrigerator on, but it also charged my laptop, charged my cell phones, like anything I wanted to plug in and get power for, I was able to get it out of the Jackery 1000. Now I also have this Jackery 300, which is just a little bit more portable. It fits in my hand. It's easy to pick up and carry around. Sometimes I pop it right in the front of the van just so I have access to it, just to use the power ports and stuff like that and sit it right between the two seats. And because it's so tiny, that's something that's really, really easy to do. So I've really adored having this one and the big one. But even if I had just the big one and didn't have the solar system that I have installed in this van, I still think it would be really awesome, to be honest. And so as I think about simplifying things and simplifying steps, as I go into my next build, I'm like, why am I going to do 20 complicated steps when I already have a power box that's super efficient and already ready to go? So I definitely, in my next build, will be using a Jackery power station. And I think it's a great plan. It's a reliable company. They support their product. And guess what, guys? Come next month, I'm going to be letting you guys know about some new stuff coming to the Jackery line. That's right. There's some more new power stations around the corner, and there's news in the solar panel world when it comes to official Jackery products. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that. I can't wait to drop that information. And in case you missed it, the last time I mentioned Jackery, the Jackery 300 and the very close, almost same size Jackery 240 are both marked down and have been marked down since the beginning of 2021. So they are cheaper than they used to be. And it's a unit you will not regret having, especially if you like to have power outside your van, play outside your van. If you like to fly drones, this is a good way to have something to charge your drone batteries. If you like photography and you have a camera that uses batteries, this is a good way to have your, a nice light thing you can carry along with a camera bag and be able to charge those batteries. In addition to laptops, cell phones, and all that kind of stuff when you just want to be away from the van. A van system is nice, but this is portable and easy, and it's well designed for its purpose. All right, let's talk about box trucks. So the number one concern, and I know I'm doing this wrong. I should start with concern number 3 and work my way up to 1, but I'm going to just start with 1. And the number one concern is not having a way to get from the cab into the back in a box truck. Now, some box trucks do already have a passageway. They have a door or an entry point between the cab and the box. But even if they don't, guess what? It's a cab smushed up against a box. And so it's actually really easy to create a pass-through, even if it isn't there when you buy it. A lot of people have done builds with U-Haul trucks. Namely, I can name 3 who've done it recently. There is Adventure Van Man, which I know a lot of my subscribers or people who watch my videos are fans of, because you keep telling me about him so much. I went and watched his videos. And he recently cut a pass-through in his small box truck. He has the 10-footer, I believe, without the mom's attic. Project Today, which is 3 young men who built out a box truck from U-Haul, and it was a size up from what Adventure Van Man has, and it has the mom's attic over top the driver's area. And that particular one has a slight gap, but for that you can throw in accordion belt. There's another young lady I watched recently who was cutting her own pass-through, and long story short, it was really, really simple. You're literally just cutting a hole in the wall. And that might sound like that's not simple to a lot of people, but think about, that's not even, something where you have to worry about leaks. You cut a hole and you pass through. That's it. If there's a solid wall and there's not a pass through, you can create one. It's super simple. We cut all kinds of holes into vans. Most people, as soon as they get their camper van, the first thing they do is cut a hole in the roof to install a roof vent. I don't have one of those. I just have pop open windows and fans. But that's the first thing normally they do is, they install that roof vent. And then a lot of people get cargo vans with no windows. And so then they proceed to cut holes in the side of their van to install windows. If it is as simple as cutting a hole and putting some framing around it, that's always something you can create. You're not always limited to what the vehicle already has. And speaking of cutting holes, that's been the second concern: windows. Now, people have asked me how important are windows since I'm considering a box truck. And box trucks commonly don't have windows. Now, that's not universally true. A lot of these trucks, especially the ones with the pass-throughs, they may be like a traveling office for like a tradesman or something like that. So some of them do have offices in the back. And so they might have a window because they don't want to be cooped up in a box without a window. Now, many people, especially people who get step vans, choose not to have windows. And it's because, honestly, it's easier to control light and light bleed if you are going to be in a lot of stealth situations if you don't give yourself a bunch of windows. Also, installation becomes tricky when you're adding windows. Like, windows are a great place for temperature to be a little more out of control than it is against a solid wall. There are ways to prevent this, but also, like, the more windows you have, the more chance you have of things like a draft or a leak or things like that, especially when you're adding them yourself. But also, even when you get old vehicles, like, the seals may not be as good as they used to be, even if they were good. And so I don't consider wanting windows or not wanting them a limitation, because really you can always add them. Like, people delete them off of buses. They'll replace the windows with like metal, because usually there's a lot of the bus they don't want to have windows. Like, some people preserve all their windows. Some people block a few off artistically or by fitting things to them. And some people try to at least aesthetically keep them all, or actually keep them all. When you get not only a box truck, but a cargo van, a step van, etc., 99% of the time, there's not going to be any windows in them. And so any windows you add is going to be an aftermarket thing. And those are holes that you have to cut where you could get a leak. And people still want them because they want to see the beautiful things outside their window while they're comfortably inside their home. Especially if you're a traveler and you're traveling to beautiful places. I don't consider windows, again, being in the truck before I buy it, at least in the box part, a make or break thing. Because they're very easy to add, easy being relative, in that people do it all the time. It really is just cutting a hole big enough for the window, popping it in there, securing it, and sealing it properly. So just because the box trucks doesn't come with windows, just like it doesn't come with the pass-through, it doesn't mean that you can't have windows, just like it doesn't mean you can't have a pass-through. All right, so the third thing that comes up a lot is it being a commercial vehicle. Remember, guys, the Sprinter, ProMaster, and Transit are all commercial vehicles. We see regular people with them so much that we forget that. Like, those vans were originally manufactured for, like, Amazon to buy 20 of them, or, like, some other big company to buy, like, 20 of them and throw their logos on them. They weren't really designed for private ownership. It's just that the RV conversion community got really into those vehicles. So almost everything that you could get as a standing height vehicle is kind of commercial class, and you could come by it a way that it was commercial. On the flip side, if you were getting them from a private owner, you could get something that was already converted private, which means the work has been done for you and it's already not classified as a commercial vehicle. The thing is, if you want a certain style of vehicle to convert, it's just a path you have to walk through. If you want to stand up in your vehicle, being in a bigger vehicle is part of that journey. Now, the thing with the Sprinters and the Transits and, etc., they are a little slimmer, whereas with a box truck, it widens on the back. And even a step van, it has a set slimness that is consistent, whereas with a box truck, after you get out the cab, it bumps out just a little bit, or a lot, depending on what kind of truck you have. Except there are some that are pretty slim boxes to the size of the cab. But generally speaking, they come out a little bit. And there are also bigger cabs as you get into bigger classes of box trucks. There are several classes of box trucks as well. When I'm talking about a box truck, I'm talking about, say, staying in the light duty class. So we're talking about box trucks that at their base aren't much different than most pickup trucks, which are also kind of big compared to regular cars. So when you're just talking about the cab part without the big box on the back, you're talking about something that's kind of in the same category as a lot of pickup trucks. Not in the same category as sort of the big giant vehicles you see driving down the road. Even though I have seen people convert some pretty big trucks into tiny homes. And they're tiny homes by measure against like real houses, but they ain't that tiny. So one, yes, it is a concern once you start looking at commercial class vehicles, how difficult or hard it's going to be to make it a private vehicle, but you may or may not have to deal with that depending on where you get it from. I know for a fact that if you buy directly from U-Haul, it's already a private vehicle. So you get it as your own personal vehicle, once you sign on the dotted line with them. So yeah, I think those were the three big things that I kind of wanted to cover that just came up a lot. And I thought it was worth talking about, showing you like sort of where my mind is on those things. Other things that came up, of course, is gas mileage and city parking. I will say most of the places I park right now in this van, I could also park there in the box truck. So like I don't have major concerns about parking. As far as gas mileage is a controllable expense. And so like I've always had to think about how much I travel in measurement to how much money I have. There's no set point. When people are highly concerned about gas mileage, they usually have to drive a certain amount of miles a day. For example, if you live in Hayward, California, and you work in San Francisco, California, and 5 days a week, normal job, you're going to have to go from Hayward to San Francisco and from San Francisco back to Hayward. And so that is going to be a set amount of money you always have to spend every week in gas. I don't have that problem. If I'm working in Oakland, I can find a way to stay near Oakland if I'm a little broke and waiting for that next paycheck to come in. And if I'm like, oh, okay, I did really well this month and I have some time off, now I can travel. People seem to assume that you have to travel a lot just because you've chosen the nomad life. No, you can travel when you have money. There's plenty of people who stay in very small areas who are like snowbirds. So they go to a certain zone in the summer and they go to a certain zone in the winter. And while they're there, they're at spots for like 2 weeks maybe. And then after that, they move to another spot for 2 weeks. There's not a lot of gas involved in that. And there's a couple of big journeys, especially, chasing the seasons. But gas is a controllable expense. That's one of the best things about your house always being with you. I can make my commute as long or as short as I want. And also, the advantage of the box truck is a lot of the reasons I drive now is just to get to places where I can stand up and walk around. It's just to be able to get out the van and stretch a bit. It's especially when I'm kind of stuck in the city and it's like, okay, I slept here, but this is not a good place to hang out all day or to exercise or to do these other tasks that I want to do. So I got to get in my van. I have to drive it to this other location where it's okay to do those things. And I get out the van and do those things. And then I'm back in the van and I'm like, okay, well, before dinner, I want to be at this spot, so that this can happen and blah, 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 blah. And so there's a million reasons that I shift locations right now that actually would not be as necessary all the time in something where not only could I stand up in it, but there was actually floor space to get steps in. So that's one of the advantages of it taking away some of the reasons I drive at least short distances in the city. So in that way, it could be an improvement. Yes, the actual miles per gallon will go down, but I get to control how many gallons I'm using, how often I'm using it to an extent. If I get a job in San Jose, I'm gonna go stay down in San Jose. I'm not gonna be coming from Berkeley to San Jose every day. And that would be a force. If I have some money, I'd be like, okay, well now I can do, drive to Utah during the summer or something like that. It's a controllable expense because I control how much I drive a lot or don't drive as much. I'm entirely in control of that to an extent. But I'm more in control of that than a person who has to commute every day from a house at a set point to, a job at a set point. And that's usually the big one you can't control. If you're a general normal person with a 9-to-5 day job and a house, that's somewhere in some city, you can't control what your commute cost is going to be if you're at an address that's somewhat permanent. And I say somewhat because we can always move. So yeah. I don't know if there were any other major things. Somebody asked if you needed commercial licenses to drive box trucks. Think about it. When you go to rent trucks from the U-Haul or the Penske or Enterprise, you just use your regular license. There's no special license required. So no. Now, if you want to go get one of those massive big giant things to build out, I don't know, you might want to look into that. I'm not sure about those, but definitely the light duty class vehicles you can drive with your regular license. No, you don't need a commercial license to drive them. The commercial assignment to them is more about insurance purposes and connecting them as business vehicles, in the system. It's not so much they're afraid of people with regular licenses driving them, because the front of them is basically a beefed up van or a light duty truck. One or the other, both some world in the middle. Thank you for watching another video. As usual, as we roll out of this video, I'm going to do my reminders that there's a subscribe button underneath the video if you want to subscribe. There's also buttons for thumbs up and thumbs down so that you can respond to the video in the way that you find according. And there's a comment section if you think that thumbs up and thumbs down just doesn't say enough. Or just to say hi to me. Or just to help me out with the algorithm. Because all these interactions, they count. And it matters to YouTube. Thank you to everyone who takes time to watch my videos, and thank you to my YouTube and Patreon memberships supporters. Thank you so much.